Also, academic mobility, as I said, in terms of training sessions, postgraduate thesis, a course module, or a term abroad, as well as student exchange programs. We have 45 higher education institutions in Lebanon, only one public university, which includes about the Lebanese university, which includes about 40% of the students in higher education in Lebanon, and the rest, 44 institutions, about 30 of those are universities, the other are university colleges, have hundreds of such agreements with other universities within the same region as well as across the world. I know, having been at AUB for 25 years, that AUB has over 100 such agreements with universities across the globe, from the States to Japan. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank ICD for their kind invitation to this, what I regard a very interesting and important event. I will not be talking as a politician in this presentation, but rather as an academician. Education, no doubt, is at the heart of many solutions, not just in the region, but in the whole world, specifically in the MENA region or Middle East and North African region, with the current youth bulge of almost 2/3 of the population of over 320 million in 21 Arab countries under the age of 30, and with an unemployment of about 25% in that region, which is the highest in the globe. No doubt, education, when I say education, of course, I mean quality education, poses a solution to many of the problems that we have seen over the past years and we are still witnessing right now. Quality education would have addressed the unemployment, the generation of jobs, the dire economic state that the countries are in the region, as well as many of the issues that are being faced right now. So going back to my presentation, basically it's divided into a short introduction. I'll talk about 21st century skills, how cultural diplomacy fits into education, and specifically how this can be integrated into the curricula, specifically in higher education institutions, but in basic education as well, how cooperation programs can contribute to cultural diplomacy, and a short conclusion. Education sector can directly and actively serve the goals sought by cultural diplomacy under a unified goal, which is preparing cultured global citizens capable of functioning in a multicultural world. So there is a strong relation between education and cultural diplomacy. The skills required to advance education in an increasingly connected multicultural world are those of cultural diplomacy. There's obviously an intersection between education goals and the 21st century, which must be taken into consideration, that involves not only the knowledge, the curricula, but also the learner and the teacher or the facilitator. 21st century skills, obviously curriculum reform in education systems should cater for the dynamically changing needs of the 21st century and should equip students with the needed breadth and depth of knowledge and skills that will enable them to work, live, and contribute in a highly competitive global society. The framework for 21st century learning consists, as you can see from the figure, of core subjects and themes that revolve around three main skills: life and career skills, learning and innovation skills, as well as ICT skills. The core subjects include English, language, arts, math, science, geography, history, civics, and others. The pool underneath that you see in the figure, underneath the rainbow, represents the paradigmatic shift towards supporting 21st century learning, understanding, and skills performance. So all of these have to be taken into consideration. This is an example of 21st century skills in the case of art education. As you can see, critical thinking, problem solving come into play, communications, collaboration, creativity, innovation, ICT literacy, social skills, cross-cultural, as well as leadership are all part of these required skills. These are some of the skills that are required from the practical side of cultural diplomacy: flexibility, communication, adaptability, initiative, as I mentioned, leadership, self-direction, and so on. These, one way or the other, can be integrated into the curricula that should meet the 21st century skills. I don't need to reiterate on cultural diplomacy. This is from the website of the ICD as defined by Dr. Cummings. So diplomacy requires the presentation of non-confrontational skills, as was mentioned before, of mediation and negotiation in order to reach a common goal. This in turn requires communication skills, part of the 21st century skills, as well as knowledge in the subject matter. Cultural diplomacy principles leading to global peace and stability include respect of cultural diversity, global intercultural interchange, justice and interdependence, supporting human rights, as well as global peace. Now, all of this can, one way or the other, be integrated into the design of curricula. And when we talk about curricula design, we could mean multiple things at the higher education level, at the basic education level, as well as at the VTE level, vocational and technical education level. I will talk, of course, curricula, because of the dynamically changing requirements of education. Curricula is designed and redesigned all the time. I know as a professor at the American University of Beirut for over 25 years, we always revisit the curricula of bachelor programs and master's programs every year or a maximum of 2 years. So it's not something that should be done once every 10 years, as has been the case in the Lebanese government. When I took over, that was my first priority, and for the past year and a half, we've been working on that. We've already revised the curricula for the first 2 cycles in basic education. We're in the process of doing the next 2 cycles. So design of curricula, I will talk about internationalization of curricula while remaining sensitive to local and regional education needs, to correlation of curricula with the labor market needs, which is not completely, but to a large extent ignored, at least in the Middle East, and pre-university curricula at the school level. Obviously, additionally, the education system has to consider teaching methodologies and assessment techniques. I personally think that as far as these 2 aspects are concerned, that over the next decade or 15 years, we will be witnessing a revolution in the way we carry out education, especially with the pace of emergence of ICT and its implementation and application in education. So first, I'll talk about internationalization of higher education curricula, which entails creating common cross-disciplinary competencies, combining competencies with balanced and coherent learning components, and requiring the design of a GE or a general education component at the bachelor degree level. This general education component is supposed to serve as the catalyst, as the common ground for all bachelor degrees at any specific university, sometimes referred to as university requirements. And this is where cultural diplomacy values can be integrated into, not necessarily only in the general education component, but in a main way in the general education component. So in relation to the requirements mentioned for cultural diplomacy and the integration of these requirements in higher education curricula through general education courses, internationalization of higher education requires the design of a component to ensure several aspects, including the development of measurable learning outcomes, as well as enabling the teaching staff to propose subjects, among other things. The general education component in higher education programs promote the liberal arts education model. Based on the definition of the Association of American Colleges and Universities, liberal education is a learning approach that empowers individuals, preparing them to deal with complexity, diversity, and change. So typically, the general education requirements include communication skills, which is written and spoken in native and English language, one of the strengths of the Lebanese educational system. All students know at least 2 languages, most know 3 languages. Thinking skills as well as ethics. The major categories of general education include natural sciences, humanities, social sciences, and quantitative thought, all offered at the sophomore level onwards. And they represent a reasonable chunk of the overall program. So if we're talking about a 3-year bachelor program starting with sophomore level, that's about 90 credits. We're talking about almost 30 credits, which is a third of the overall program. Another important issue is harmonization of curricula with labor market needs, which is very much lacking in the MENA region, as I mentioned before. For example, targeting specific professions in direct and permanent contact with society. Among these jobs are the education sector, health sector, social affairs, social services, law sector, among others. Also, graduates should have a high sense of humanity, ethics, concern for public and human rights in terms of beliefs as well as in terms of practices. The labor market needs and curricula require adaptation of curricula to the profession's requirements, for example, elements pertaining to general culture, laws, ethics, practice modules, and to adapt teaching and learning methodologies that are needed to achieve that purpose. As far as pre-university curricula, and in the case of Lebanon, the Lebanese pre-university education system consists of 12 years of study, followed by following a period of preschool education, which is 3 years. We have free public education. We have about 3,000 schools, half of them almost are public institutions. Mandatory education until grade 9, usually age of 15. Optional pre-elementary education of 3 years, and 3 cycles of education, elementary, middle school, and high school, which is typically what most countries have. Therefore, integrating cultural diplomacy into education requires the following measures. We should be revising the curricula as we're doing in Lebanon, establishing better teaching practices to switch from, which has been the case for many institutions, but not completely, from teacher-centered to student-centered teaching. Ensuring a healthy school environment, enhancing social educational activities, strengthening the relation between school and society. And we've done that recently. I've passed a decree which has been approved by the cabinet for community service. So all schools, and we have about 1 million students in the 3,000 schools in Lebanon. That's a quarter of the population almost. All students in the secondary school phase have to fulfill 60 hours of community service over the period of 3 years before they graduate. And sharing success stories and good practices. Designing such a program entails working on the practical, on the scientific, and literary subjects, in particular those related to the social fields. For example, in history, geography, civic education, sociology, languages, as well as math and nature sciences. Parallel to developing curricula that encompass cultural diplomacy, the educational system can develop many activities to promote diplomacy at the learner's level inside and outside the classroom. For example, enhance the teaching of foreign languages. At least one foreign language, and that's the case of Lebanon, has to be part of the overall educational experience. Promote the reading at school level, reading world cultures and in different languages. Organize competitions on subjects related to mankind achievements, world cultures, and civilizations. We have dozens, maybe hundreds of such competitions that the ministry is supporting, promoting in many ways in the private as well as the public sector in Lebanon. A lot of them are international competitions to allow students to rub shoulders with their peers in other countries. Also organize extracurricular activities oriented to serve the goals of cultural diplomacy. Many examples of those. Encourage enrollment in foreign diplomas. We have a lot of that in Lebanon. And celebrate world occasions and days so that you raise awareness at the school levels. Another important issue in higher education is cooperation programs between higher education institutions that promote student mobility. Regarding student mobility, we are also currently finalizing, we've been working on this for the past year, for the first time, an NQF, a National Qualification Framework for Lebanon. I know there are NQFs for most countries in Europe, in North America, and other countries in the world. And we are in the process of finalizing that so that it is in line and with a high correlation factor with these other NQFs to allow simple mobility, easy mobility of students across different countries and therefore different NQFs. Launching different forms of cooperation between higher education institutions can include establishment of joint degrees, research activities, various events, seminars, international conferences, workshops, and so on. And Lebanon has been the hub in the region, at least when there is peace, to encourage that in the private as well as the public higher education sector. Also, academic mobility, as I said, in terms of training sessions, postgraduate thesis, a course module or a term abroad, as well as student exchange programs. We have 45 higher education institutions in Lebanon, only one public university, which includes about the Lebanese university, which includes about 40% of the students in higher education in Lebanon, and the rest, 44 institutions, about 30 of those are universities, the other are university colleges, have hundreds of such agreements with other universities within the same region as well as across the world. I know, having been at AUB for 25 years, that AUB has over 100 such agreements with universities across the globe, from the States to Japan. In Lebanon, academic freedom has led to a diversity which I very much encourage, diversity of education system, whether it's Anglo or Franco, or European or an Arab or a hybrid between those institutions. However, I have been very much pushing for quality education in terms of asking for institutional and program accreditations. Quite a few universities have already done that. Some are in the process of doing that. I've also pushed for a new law, which is now in the parliament, approved by the cabinet, that has to do with establishing a new quality assurance board for higher education that is independent from the minister and from all politicians to do their proper academic work. However, we have also a national exam for some specialties in medicine, pharmacy, dentistry, nursing, physiotherapy, nutrition, medical lab, and so on, to ensure quality of degrees, students that get the degrees across the world. Government policy and the Ministry of Education and Higher Education Action Plan in Lebanon play a major role in empowering cultural diplomacy, particularly through bilateral and multi-country agreements. It is also worth mentioning that in the Lebanese education system, teaching foreign languages is essential. So the first foreign language is either French or English, and the second is either French, English, German, Italian, or Armenian. Teaching foreign curricula and degrees, I mentioned that before. This includes French bac, international bac. There's an Arab international bac under study. This is in addition to the Lebanese bac that Lebanese students have to undergo. In conclusion, cultural diplomacy is a heading under which many objectives are set up. Objectives should be federated in different areas, in politics, in education, in media and culture, in labor, in social affairs, and so on. So it's not just the Ministry of Education. There are many players in achieving this. Various commitments and international declarations related to cultural diplomacy exist nowadays. However, practical measures remain the most effective and efficient way of materializing cultural diplomacy. It enhances cooperation. Education plays a major role in establishing concepts aimed by cultural diplomacy, and weaving cultural diplomacy into the internationalization of education will become more relevant and necessary as we move toward the goal of graduating international citizens that balance depth in the subject matter and breadth of knowledge with appreciation for multiculturalism, so that the new generations may have life and live it more abundantly. Finally, I just want to say a word that to give Lebanon as an example of how essential cultural diplomacy is. As the late former Pope mentioned when he visited Lebanon, Lebanon is not only a country, it is a message to the whole world, and a unique model of a mosaic of social fabric and interfaith coexistence in one society. I say failure of the Lebanese model as a societal coexistence is not only a failure of Lebanon or even the region, but the whole world. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for sharing with us the successful story of Lebanon as a case of a successful higher educational and enhancing cultural diplomacy. Let's see if the audience has any questions. Yes?
Thank you very much. My name is Götz Kaufmann. I'm teaching since 4 years at Freie Universität in sociology, and I'm now professor at Institute for Cultural Diplomacy. I really appreciated your presentation. I think you're really targeting the main questions we have in science now by including cultural diplomacy in teaching best practices. I have a question regarding one slide you have shown where you referred to quantitative thoughts. As a sociologist and mainly focusing on methods, I was wondering in as much this distinguishes like qualitative and quantitative thoughts, and why you have chosen this concept instead of many others you could have chosen.
What I have mentioned are examples of the various categories and aspects that have to be considered when integrating cultural diplomacy. It's not necessarily limited to those. Obviously, experts in the area are working on this. I'm not an expert myself. I'm a professor of computer engineering. So these are posed as examples to just illustrate the diverse areas in which cultural diplomacy can be integrated, not necessarily only in classroom activities, but could be hands-on and practical out of classroom activities, which in many cases are probably absorbed much better by students than in class activities. So just as an illustrative example.
Any other question?
So thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. My question is regarding to this point, education has the greatest impact to build an honorable example for the society, and education plays a major role in establishing city cultural diplomacy. How far is it in Lebanon, or how far can you see the possibility to go over this pilot project or extra subject of cultural diplomacy, and to see it inclusive by teacher design curricula, teacher trainings, by new development of main subjects with a focus on peace building, social inclusion, cultural diplomacy, intercultural, interreligious dialogue. How far can you see that?
Okay. First, I should perhaps clarify that Lebanon has been, for the past decades, as anybody from the region might be aware, has been the beacon of education and higher education in the MENA region. Everybody wanted to go to Lebanon for their education. However, due to many problems that you're probably aware of, starting from the civil war up to the current situation, there has been many problems and delays in the education sector. For example, when I took over a year and a half ago, I found out that the curricula, the Ministry of Education and Higher Education is the largest in the Lebanese, out of the Lebanese ministries, because under its umbrella, we have basic education, as I said, 3,000 schools and 1 million students. We have higher education, about 45 institutions, 250,000 students, and we have vocational and technical education. All of these are separate directorates. And we have the CERD, the Center for Education Research and Development, that carries out all the training of teachers as well as the design of the curricula. Those, the curricula, I'm talking about K-12 curricula. The curricula, when I took over, has not been touched for 14 years. So my initial task was, let's start work on the curricula, set up many teams. It's a major task. And we've been working on this for the past year. As I said, we've finished the first 2 cycles approved by the cabinet. We're currently working on the next 2 cycles, and then hopefully when we finish that, we'll have the secondary level left to carry out. So it depends on the lifetime of the government. When revisiting curricula, which by law, by the way, in Lebanon should be done every, in a maximum of every period of 4 years. Not practiced, but nevertheless, there is a decree to that effect. When we revise curricula, there are a million things to include. Environmental awareness, nationalism-related topics, many issues to include, not necessarily in-class activities. Some of them may be activities outside the classroom, including cultural diplomacy. So it's an intricate process that has to be carried out, and obviously by experts that define where each task has to be placed and to what extent. You cannot do everything. So this is not an easy process, but this leads to a graduate that is aware of the world around him, that is a global citizen, that is knowledgeable breadth-wise, not just depth-wise, because in our high school system, we have 4 different tracks, 2 in the science and 2 in the literary, in the humanities area. So students choose one of them before deciding to go to one of the specializations in university. And allowing students to basically be global citizens and aware of human rights and all the global issues. Lebanon being in the middle, between, has always been the meeting point between East and West for the past 2 millenniums. So many things are happening in Lebanon all the time, and students, school students and university students are very aware of many of the issues, that regional issues as well as international issues. So integrating these into the curricula, allowing them to participate in such activities is definitely enriching to students, and they stand out. They stand out compared to high school students from the rest of the region and other places in the world even. And even those that graduate from some of the universities, high-quality universities in Lebanon, such as AUB, are accepted in the top universities across the world, including MIT, Harvard, not because they're top only depth-wise in the specialization area, but they are well-balanced. Strong communication skills, strong breadth of knowledge, aware of many things in the world, and entrepreneurs in their own right. Entrepreneurship is another topic that we're teaching, not teaching, but the culture of entrepreneurship is being integrated into curricula at high school. We have a pilot study for that, but the curricula is not a pilot study. This is it. We're doing it, and once it's approved by the cabinet, it will be implemented.
Mr. Minister, thank you very much for exhaustively answering to our questions and invitation. It was really a pleasure having you here. Thank you very much for your participation.